So you get it that from the progressive revolution around the turn of the 20th century, which in large part came about as a consequence of the great crash of 1896, which led to the election of McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt as the vice president. McKinley was assassinated in 1901, shortly after he was inaugurated. And Teddy Roosevelt, did I say Kennedy? Teddy Roosevelt became president, Theodore Roosevelt, who was an unabashed progressive Republican. And he set about breaking up big oil. He took the Standard Oil Company, broke it into 29 pieces, went after the sugar cartels. They called them trusts back then. Broke up the sugar cartel, broke up the copper cartel, broke up the tin cartel, broke up the match cartel. Yes, making matches was a big deal back then. There was a bunch of them. And William Howard Taft, a Republican who followed him as president, continued this. In fact, I think the final breakup of Standard Oil happened when Taft was president. Much like, Richard Nixon initiated breaking up AT&T, and it finally happened under Jimmy Carter's presidency. So it used to be that we encouraged business. We provided business in America with this fertile soil in which to grow to root themselves. Things like an educated populace in the 19aughts, in the 19-teens, in the 1920s. I'm not sure the exact year. I think it was over a period of several decades, actually, because it varied from state to state. But as we moved from being an agrarian society into an industrialized society, as the Industrial Revolution took hold, it became obvious that just having a third or fourth grade education or no education at all, or a fifth or sixth grade education was not enough, even to work in a factory, because you had to be able to read directions, fill out reports, things like that. So we started providing free education all the way up to 12th grade. And California and a bunch of other localities, City College in New York, others, said we're going to provide free education all the way up to college. Abraham Lincoln came up with the land grant thing so people could have free college education. Ronald Reagan, of course, undid all that, first in the state of California, then at the federal level. But, we provided this basis, this soil for companies to grow in, a free, an educated populace, workforce, public roads so they can get to work, public roads so you can get your products out, the rail systems, air systems, the internet invented by government funding, by basic research from government funding. We provide all this infrastructure to business. And all we say in return is, please let us make the rules, because it's about we the people. It's not about you the business. You have a privilege to do business. You don't necessarily have a right. You have the privilege to do business in this country. And if you're going to do business, you have to do it within certain rules, certain boundaries. And one of those boundaries used to be, don't buy the politicians who make the rules. Right. Until 1976 in Buckley versus Vallejo, the Supreme Court said, we will decide that spending money to influence politicians or politics or issues, that spending money to do that is actually protected by the First Amendment, whether you're a rich individual or a corporation. Actually, in 76 in Buckley, it was rich individual. In 77, a year later, in First National Bank versus Bilotti, it was corporations too. So you heard that law, that was a Wisconsin law that I just read to you, to promote or defeat the candidacy of any person for nomination, appointment, or election in any political office, blah, 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 blah. Right? 5 years, what was it, 5 years in prison? Yeah. $5,000. Yeah, 5 years in prison. And then take a look at this. Now, here's where we're at now. The American Petroleum Institute. You think, half the Republicans in Congress deny that there's global warming. The rest of them are like, well, yeah, maybe it's sunspots. Who knows? You think that could have something to do with the American Petroleum Institute or the various oil companies out there, from ExxonMobil to Koch Industries? The American Petroleum Institute spent $7 million directly lobbying. They spent $85 million on PR, which is lobbying you and me and members of Congress. You should see the ads that run on TV here in Washington, D.C., the issue ads. Why? I mean, you see them on MSNBC, you see them on Fox, and you see them on CNN, principally. Why? Because members of Congress watch the news, too. So they're lobbying the members of Congress. I mean, I'm watching ads all the time here in D.C. I mean, I'm talking about ads for like, fighter jet manufacturers. There's no way I'm going to buy an F-35, right? I'm sorry. I don't have a couple $100 million hanging around. But Congress does. So anyhow, the American Petroleum Institute, number one, from 2008 to 2012, spent $327 million. A little more than a half a century ago, they'd find their asses in jail for that. This is the essence of, in 1971, when Lewis Powell wrote the famous Powell memo to his friend Eugene Sindor, the head of the American Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. At that point in time, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was not a political agency. They did not lobby. They did not support political candidates. And Lewis Powell, who 3 months later Richard Nixon put on the Supreme Court, said, you got to start doing this stuff. Ta-da! Lewis Powell wrote the leading the opinion in Buckley versus Vallejo. Second, number two, business associations led by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Second largest industry, $214 million from 2008 to 2012. This by Aaron Quinn and Chris Young from the Center for Public Integrity. Third, finance, insurance, and real estate. They paid PR agencies $184.5 million. Fourth, food and beverage industry. They paid $104 million from 2008 to 2012. And rounding out the top five industries, they note, was telecommunications and electronics, led by the CTIA, the Wireless Association, which represents companies like AT&T, Verizon, etc., and the Software Alliance. Welcome to oligarchy.